before altitude thins the air, before oceans erase the horizon, before heat, ice, or silence begin to push the human body out of balance, there exists a layer of the world that still tolerates us. A surface where nature allows observation without resistance, where beauty feels generous, accessible, and calm. But that permission does not extend everywhere. Beyond familiar landscapes lie places that were never shaped for comfort, never negotiated with human scale, and never designed to be permanent destinations. These are not attractions in the traditional sense. They are boundaries, zones where nature asserts authorship and human presence becomes conditional. Some of these places appear gentle at first glance. Hills aligned too perfectly, lakes so still they feel artificial, forests that seem arranged rather than grown. Others announce danger immediately, sheer drops, unstable ground, water that moves faster than reaction. And further still are regions where biology itself begins to fail, where heat, cold, pressure, or isolation quietly dismantle the rules that allow humans to function. This journey is not a checklist. It is not a ranking. It is not a race across the globe. It is a descent through levels of access. From landscapes that cooperate with human movement, to territories that demand rules, permits, and restraint, to environments that tolerate us only briefly, and finally, to realms where survival itself feels incidental. Each place we encounter reveals a different relationship between Earth and those who attempt to stand upon it. Some are preserved by law, others by danger, and some remain untouched simply because they are incompatible with permanence. As this journey unfolds, the world will not become louder or more dramatic. It will become quieter, stricter, less forgiving, because the most unbelievable places on Earth are not defined by how many people reach them, but by how clearly they remind us where human presence ends. At first glance, the Chocolate Hills do not appear wild. They appear arranged. Across the island of Bohol, more than 1,000 rounded hills rise from the ground with near-uniform spacing and scale, each standing roughly 30 to 50 meters tall. From above, the landscape resembles a carefully engineered pattern, too consistent to feel accidental, too orderly to feel chaotic. This visual discipline is what makes the Chocolate Hills unsettling in their quiet way. Nature here does not sprawl. It repeats. Their name comes not from fantasy, but from transformation. During the rainy season, the hills are covered in grass, turning the terrain into a continuous green field, broken only by soft curvature. But as the dry season arrives, the vegetation fades. The slopes shift to deep brown, then gold, until the entire region resembles a vast field of chocolate drops under open sky. Nothing moves, nothing breaks the symmetry. Geologically, the hills are ancient limestone formations shaped by erosion over millions of years. Rainwater, slightly acidic, dissolved the rock slowly and evenly, carving the land into these rounded forms. The process required time, consistency, and absence of disturbance. The result is a landscape that looks designed, yet contains no trace of human intention. What makes the Chocolate Hills part of the untouched world is not isolation, but restraint. There are roads, viewpoints, and nearby villages, yet the hills themselves remain unaltered. No construction cuts through them. No terraces reshape their slopes. They exist as a preserved pattern, protected by both geography and law. The surrounding ecosystem reinforces this balance. Bohol is home to rare species found nowhere else, including the Philippine tarsier, one of the smallest primates on Earth. Small, quiet, and nocturnal, it mirrors the character of the hills themselves, present but never intrusive. The Chocolate Hills represent the earliest layer of this journey, a place where nature still allows closeness, where humans can observe without confrontation, where beauty does not demand endurance or risk. But even here, something is made clear. This landscape does not adapt to us. We adapt our expectations to it, and that quiet boundary is what keeps it intact. Lake Bled appears almost deliberate, as if the landscape paused to arrange itself around human presence. Formed by a retreating glacier thousands of years ago, the lake rests at the edge of the Julian Alps, its waters fed by underground springs that keep it remarkably clear and calm. Unlike many alpine lakes shaped by violence and collapse, Bled feels composed. The shoreline curves gently. The surrounding forests do not crowd the water. Nothing feels excessive. At the lake's center sits a small island, the only natural island in Slovenia, topped by a church whose bell has echoed across the water for centuries. Reaching it requires no conquest. Visitors cross by wooden boats moved slowly by hand, the rhythm steady, unhurried. This is not a place that demands urgency. The lake's color shifts with light and season. In spring and summer, glacial minerals turn the water a soft turquoise. In autumn, reflections of gold and copper trees flatten the surface into glass. Even in winter, when snow settles on the Alps and the water darkens, the lake retains its balance. Nothing feels hostile, nothing pushes back. Human presence here is visible but measured. A walking path circles the lake, designed for pace rather than efficiency. Castles and villas overlook the water, not as intrusions, but as observers. Tourism exists, yet it does not fracture the environment. The scale remains human. Movement remains slow. What makes Lake Bled significant in a journey of untouched places is not its isolation, but its restraint. This is a landscape that still accommodates people without surrendering its structure. Nature here does not need fences or danger to protect itself. It survives through proportion. Lake Bled represents a rare equilibrium, where beauty does not escalate into spectacle and access does not degrade meaning. It is a place where humans can remain present without altering the rhythm of the land. But this balance is fragile. Lake Bled belongs to the first level of the world where nature still cooperates, where silence is not enforced by fear and limits are not written in warning signs. It is the calm before escalation. A reminder of what coexistence looks like, before distance, altitude, and danger begin to narrow the terms of belonging. The Avenue of the Baobabs does not feel like a forest. It feels like a corridor through time. Along a dirt road in western Madagascar, towering baobab trees rise in parallel lines, their massive trunks stretching upward before exploding into bare, root-like branches. Some reach heights of nearly 30 meters. Many are over 800 years old. They were already ancient, before the modern world existed around them. Baobabs evolved not to dominate the landscape, but to endure it. Their swollen trunks store vast quantities of water, allowing them to survive prolonged droughts in one of Madagascar's most unpredictable climates. In the dry season, they shed their leaves completely, standing bare against the sky, less like trees, more like monuments. What makes this avenue extraordinary is absence. The surrounding forest that once filled the region is gone, cleared over centuries for agriculture and settlement. The baobabs remain only because they were too large, too sacred, or too difficult to remove. What appears untouched is, in fact, what survived. And yet, despite that history, the avenue does not feel damaged. At sunrise and sunset, the light flattens the landscape, turning dust into gold and silhouettes into shadows that stretch endlessly across the road. The trees do not move. They do not frame the scene. They define it. Human presence here is minimal and temporary. There are no buildings lining the avenue, no infrastructure cutting between the trunks. People arrive, pause, and leave. The trees remain unmoved by observation. Ecologically, these baobabs are keystone species. Their flowers open at night, pollinated by bats and nocturnal insects. Their hollow trunks provide shelter for birds, reptiles, and small mammals. Even in isolation, they sustain life. The avenue of the baobabs belongs to the first layer of untouched places, not because it has never been altered, but because it resists replacement. It does not adapt to modern rhythms, it outlives them. This is not a destination built for progress. It is a reminder that endurance is a form of power. And in the stillness between these trees, time does not pass forward. It accumulates. Banff National Park is often described as pristine wilderness, yet its true character lies in how deliberately it has been contained. Established in 1885, Banff is the oldest national park in Canada, carved into the heart of the Rocky Mountains. Glaciers, alpine meadows, and jagged peaks dominate the landscape, shaped by ice and tectonic force over millions of years. The scale is immense, but not chaotic. Valleys funnel movement. Mountains dictate sightlines. Nature here is structured by geology, not by human intent. What distinguishes Banff from more remote wilderness is presence. Roads cut through the park, railways trace its edges. Small towns exist within its boundaries. And yet, despite this accessibility, the environment retains authority. Wildlife does not retreat. Grizzly bears, elk, wolves, and mountain goats move freely, often crossing paths designed for people rather than yielding to them. The park's lakes, such as Lake Louise and Moraine Lake, appear unreal in color. Their turquoise hues are not reflections or algae, but glacial rock flour suspended in the water, scattering light. These lakes look calm, but they are cold, mineral-rich, and inhospitable beneath the surface. Beauty here is visual, not forgiving. Banff operates under strict systems of regulation. Development is capped. Human expansion is monitored. Entire corridors are reserved solely for animal migration. This is not untouched land in the absolute sense. It is managed wilderness, protected through limitation rather than isolation. That management reveals an important truth about modern exploration. Some landscapes survive, not because they are unreachable, but because they are defended by rules. Banff exists as a negotiated space. Humans are allowed inside, but only under conditions set by the land itself. This balance creates tension. Visitors arrive expecting comfort and scale. What they encounter instead is exposure, rapid weather shifts, altitude, stress, and wildlife that does not acknowledge human priority. The mountains remain indifferent. Banff represents the final form of cooperative nature, a place where access is granted, but dominance is not. Where beauty is abundant, yet danger remains quietly present. It is wilderness held in check, not by concrete or walls, but by restraint. Beyond this level, the world stops negotiating, and Banff stands as the threshold, where human systems still function, but no longer lead. Ha Long Bay does not rise from the land. It emerges from water. Across the Gulf of Tonkin, more than 1,600 limestone karsts and islands break the surface of the sea, rising vertically with no visible transition from ocean to stone. Their shapes feel abrupt, sheer walls, sharp ridgelines, hollowed interiors, formed not by collision but by erosion, sustained over hundreds of millions of years. Rain, salt, and time dissolved the limestone from above and below, leaving only what resisted collapse. The bay's name means descending dragon, a legend that mirrors its appearance. From a distance, the karsts resemble a frozen wave mid-motion, as if the sea itself hardened before settling. Between them, narrow channels shift with the tide, opening and closing passageways that are navigable one hour and sealed the next. Ha Long Bay exists in constant negotiation with water. The sea controls access, tides reshape routes, storms erase orientation. Caves carved inside the islands, some large enough to hold entire chambers, fill and empty with the tide, reminding visitors that the bay is never static. Human presence here floats rather than anchors. There are no roads between the islands. Movement happens by boat, slow and dependent. Fishing villages drift with the water, their structures designed to yield rather than resist. Permanence is rare. Adaptation is mandatory. Beneath the surface, Ha Long Bay hosts layered ecosystems. Coral reefs cling to submerged karsts. Mangroves stabilize shorelines. Fish and invertebrates thrive in the nutrient-rich waters created by constant circulation. Life here depends on motion, not stillness. What makes Ha Long Bay part of the untouched world is not absence of people, but absence of control. The land cannot be leveled. The sea cannot be paused. Even tourism is constrained by weather, tides, and fragile geology. This is a place where the environment sets the schedule. Ha Long Bay belongs to the first level of the journey, where beauty remains accessible, but authority is already shifting away from land and toward water. It is cooperative, but not compliant. Beyond this, the sea becomes less decorative, and eventually, it stops accommodating observation at all. The Faroe Islands do not announce themselves. They emerge slowly through fog, wind, and silence. Suspended between Iceland and Norway in the North Atlantic, this isolated archipelago of 18 main islands is shaped almost entirely by weather. Steep basalt cliffs rise directly from the ocean. Grass-covered slopes descend without transition. There are no trees to interrupt the horizon, only wind, water, and rock. Here, distance is not measured in kilometers, but in conditions. Roads end abruptly, tunnels dive beneath the sea, travel schedules are shaped by visibility and wind rather than clocks. Even modern infrastructure feels provisional, built to endure storms rather than conquer terrain. The island's climate is defined by motion. Low clouds race across the landscape. Rain arrives without warning, then vanishes just as quickly. Waves strike the cliffs with enough force to send water skyward in long, vertical plumes. In some places, waterfalls do not fall into rivers. They are carried sideways into the ocean by wind before touching the ground. Human settlements exist, but they are sparse and compact. Villages cluster tightly for shelter, their turf-roofed houses blending into the hills rather than standing apart from them. Color is minimal. Everything is built to withstand exposure. Wildlife thrives where humans thin out. Seabirds nest by the millions along the cliffs, puffins, gannets, and fulmars, occupying ledges unreachable by foot. Beneath the surface, cold Atlantic currents support rich marine life, including dolphins and whales that pass close to shore. What makes the Faroe Islands part of the untouched world is not absence of people, but absence of dominance. The islands do not accommodate expansion. Weather enforces limits that no technology overrides. There is no illusion of control here. Even traditions reflect this balance. Life on the Faroes has always been shaped by cycles, migration, fishing seasons, light and darkness. Modern systems exist, but they remain secondary to environmental reality. The Faroe Islands mark a transition in this journey. Beauty remains visible, access is still possible, but comfort begins to dissolve. Here, nature no longer cooperates, it tolerates. And with every shift of fog and wind, the islands remind visitors that permanence in this landscape is conditional and always temporary. Trollfjord is not discovered gradually. It appears suddenly, then closes behind you. Hidden within Norway's Lofoten archipelago, this narrow fjord stretches only a few kilometers inland, yet feels far longer once entered. At its widest, Trollfjord is barely 300 meters across. At its narrowest, the walls compress inward so tightly that the sky itself seems reduced to a strip of light overhead. The fjord was carved by glaciers, not by flow, but by pressure. Ice forced its way through ancient rock, gouging a corridor that drops steeply into deep, cold water. When the glaciers retreated, they left behind a passage too tight for forgiveness. There are no beaches here, no gradual shorelines. The rock rises straight from the sea. Approach matters. Boats must slow and align precisely to enter the fjord. Navigating a mouth so narrow, it feels less like an opening and more like a decision. Once inside, the sound changes. Engines echo sharply. Waves rebound off stone. The water darkens. Despite its severity, Trollfjord is alive. White-tailed eagles nest high on the cliffs, their wings cutting across the confined airspace. Seabirds gather where the fjord opens into the sea, feeding on fish driven into dense schools by the surrounding walls. The ecosystem here depends on enclosure. Light behaves differently inside Trollfjord. Sunrises and sunsets are compressed into brief moments, reflected off vertical stone and water simultaneously. During winter, snow clings to the peaks, narrowing the fjord further, while the sun barely clears the horizon. Human presence is strictly temporary. There are no settlements along the fjord. No structures cling to its sides. Trollfjord does not offer space to build, only space to pass through. This is not a landscape designed for observation from a distance. It demands entry, and once entered, it denies escape from its scale. Trollfjord represents the threshold where nature begins to assert geometry over comfort. The land no longer spreads, it constricts. Movement here is allowed, but only on its terms. Beyond places like this, the world stops presenting itself as scenery and begins functioning as a constraint. Milford Sound does not rely on scale to overwhelm. It relies on persistence. Carved by glaciers during the last ice age, this fjord on New Zealand's South Island plunges sharply from sea level to peaks, rising more than 1,000 meters on either side. The walls are sheer, polished, smooth by ice, and nearly vertical. There are no intermediate slopes. The transition from water to sky is immediate. Rain defines this place. Milford Sound receives an average of nearly 7 meters of rainfall each year, making it one of the wettest inhabited regions on Earth. Water rarely settles. It falls, streams, and pours continuously down the cliffs, forming hundreds of temporary waterfalls that appear during storms and vanish just as quickly. The landscape is never still. This constant rainfall shapes life below the surface. Freshwater runoff forms a dark, tannin-stained layer on top of the saltwater, blocking sunlight and allowing deep-sea species to survive unusually close to the surface. Black coral, typically found hundreds of meters down, thrives here just a few meters beneath the waterline. The fjord inverts ecological expectations. Sound behaves differently in Milford Sound. Rain absorbs noise. Mist diffuses direction. Even large boats feel muted, reduced to slow movement within an enclosed vertical space. Orientation becomes visual rather than spatial. You move forward because there is nowhere else to go. Human access is limited by geography. There is only one road into Milford Sound, cut through mountain tunnels and avalanche zones. Weather regularly closes it. Helicopters and boats provide alternative access, but only when conditions allow. The fjord decides who enters. Despite this, Milford Sound remains inhabited by life. Seals rest on rocks at the water's edge. Dolphins patrol the inlet. Penguins nest in crevices along the shore, emerging only under cover of low light. Everything here moves cautiously. Milford Sound belongs firmly to the remote and silent layer of the world. It is accessible, but never accommodating. It does not escalate with danger. It erodes through repetition. Here, nature does not confront. It persists, and over time, that persistence becomes absolute quietly, reminding visitors that endurance, not violence, is the most effective form of power. Socotra Island feels less like a place on Earth and more like a separate experiment. Isolated in the Arabian Sea, hundreds of kilometers from the nearest mainland, Socotra has remained biologically detached for millions of years. That separation allowed life here to evolve along its own trajectory, largely untouched by external influence. As a result, more than a third of its plant species exist nowhere else on the planet. The island's most iconic form is the dragon's blood tree. Its umbrella-shaped canopy spreads outward rather than upward, designed to shade its own trunk and capture moisture from fog. When cut, the tree bleeds a deep red resin, once prized for medicine, dye, and ritual, giving the island both its name and its mystique. These trees do not grow in forests. They stand apart, scattered across high plateaus like sentinels. Socotra's terrain resists familiarity. Limestone caves open unexpectedly in the mountains. Coastal plains give way to jagged highlands. Sand dunes press directly against the sea. There is no single dominant ecosystem, only fragments coexisting without merging. Fresh water is scarce. Rain is seasonal and unpredictable. Human presence here is minimal and fragile. Villages are small. Infrastructure is limited. Internet and phone service are unreliable. Movement depends on weather and rough tracks rather than roads. Modern systems do not dominate daily life. They intrude briefly, then withdraw. Wildlife reflects the island's isolation. Reptiles outnumber mammals. Birds migrate through Socotra but do not linger. Insects fill ecological roles elsewhere, occupied by larger animals. Evolution here favored survival without competition. What makes Socotra part of the untouched world is not absence of humans, but absence of assimilation. The island does not absorb external patterns. It does not adapt to global systems. It remains functionally separate. Socotra represents the furthest point of the remote and silent layer, a place that exists beyond networked reality. Time here is biological, not digital. This is not a destination that invites permanence. It reminds us that separation itself can preserve complexity, and that some worlds endure only by remaining apart. Fanjing Mountain does not rise gradually, it withdraws. Located in Guizhou province, this isolated massif stands apart from the surrounding terrain, its summit lifting abruptly above dense forest and mist. At over 2,500 meters in elevation, the mountain is not China's tallest, but it is one of its most distinct. The ascent feels less like climbing and more like leaving the ground behind. The name Fanjing derives from Buddhist tradition, referring to a pure land untouched by suffering. That symbolism is reinforced by geography. Clouds frequently wrap the upper slopes, separating the summit from the world below. Visibility shifts without warning. Orientation becomes vertical rather than horizontal. At the peak, the mountain splits into two narrow stone spires, connected by a fragile-looking bridge. On each spire sits a temple, balanced on rock so limited it appears impossible. There is no margin, no expansion. The structures exist only because they fit exactly. Reaching this summit requires climbing thousands of steps, more than 8,000 by some routes cut directly into stone. There are no roads, no vehicles. Every meter of ascent must be earned physically. Weather compounds the challenge, with wind and moisture making the final approach unpredictable. Fanjing Mountain's isolation preserved more than architecture. The surrounding forests are a biological refuge, home to rare species such as the Guizhou snub-nosed monkey and ancient plant lineages that survived mass extinctions. These ecosystems endured precisely because the terrain resisted human penetration. Human presence here is governed by restriction, Access is limited. Construction is prohibited beyond existing structures. The mountain is not managed for efficiency or volume, but for continuity. It is protected not by danger alone, but by reverence. Fanjing Mountain marks the transition from remoteness to sanctity. This is no longer a place where nature merely tolerates observation. It enforces behavior. Silence becomes functional. Movement slows. The mountain does not invite conquest. It allows approach, on conditions defined by elevation, belief, and balance. Beyond places like this, access is no longer a right. It is permission. Zhangjiajie does not feel carved by erosion. It feels extracted. In northwestern Hunan province, thousands of narrow sandstone pillars rise vertically from the forest floor, some exceeding 300 meters in height. They do not form ridges or ranges. They stand alone, isolated columns, separated by voids of air and mist. From a distance, the terrain looks incomplete, as if sections of the landscape were lifted upward and left suspended. These formations were shaped by a long process of uplift, fracturing, and relentless weathering. Water seeped into cracks. Vegetation rooted itself into stone. Over millions of years, the surrounding rock dissolved away, leaving only what resisted collapse. What remains is not continuity, but interruption. Movement through Zhangjiajie is disorienting. Paths wind below the pillars, often disappearing into fog. Elevation changes abruptly. Orientation shifts from forward motion to vertical awareness. The ground feels temporary. The sky feels close. Clouds play an active role here. Moist air from the surrounding valleys condenses rapidly, wrapping the stone columns in drifting mist that forms and dissolves without warning. Visibility collapses, then returns. The landscape constantly rewrites itself. This instability is what gives Zhangjiajie its otherworldly reputation. Human access exists, but it is highly controlled. Walkways cling to cliff faces. Glass bridges span empty space, offering no protection from scale. Elevators and cable cars reduce physical effort, but they do not reduce exposure. The sensation of height remains absolute. Ecologically, the region supports dense, subtropical forests beneath the pillars. The vertical separation creates microclimates, cool, damp shadows below, and wind-exposed summits above. Life adapts to fragmentation. Zhangjiajie belongs to the sacred and forbidden layer of the journey, not because it is religious, but because it defies normal spatial logic. The landscape resists habitation. There is no horizontal expansion, no place to settle. Here, nature does not stretch outward. It rises and withdraws. Zhangjiajie reminds us that some environments are not meant to be crossed or occupied. They are meant to be navigated briefly on narrow paths, under strict conditions, with constant awareness of emptiness. Beyond this point, beauty stops being accommodating, and space itself becomes the primary obstacle. The wave does not appear by chance. It must be allowed. Hidden within the Vermilion Cliffs of northern Arizona, this sandstone formation exists in a landscape that refuses mass access. There are no roads leading to it, no signs marking the route, no visual cues. Once the desert begins to repeat itself, reaching the wave requires navigation, endurance, and permission. Access is restricted to just a few dozen visitors per day, selected through a permit system designed not for convenience, but for preservation. This limitation is not symbolic. The sandstone here is fragile. Its smooth, undulating surfaces, shaped by wind and water over nearly 200 million years. A single, careless step can leave a mark that lasts longer than a lifetime. Visually, the wave feels fluid. Bands of red, orange, and pale cream curve and intersect, forming a pattern that resembles frozen motion. There are no straight lines, no reference points. Depth perception collapses as shadow and color replace structure. The rock appears to fold inward, erasing the sense of direction. The desert environment surrounding the wave enforces additional discipline. Summer temperatures rise rapidly, shade is minimal, water sources are non-existent. Storms can transform dry washes into sudden barriers. Rescue is slow and uncertain. Every decision carries consequence. Unlike many iconic landscapes, the wave offers no infrastructure once reached, no railings, no platforms, no designated viewpoints. Observation happens at ground level, at walking speed. The absence of barriers is intentional. It shifts responsibility entirely onto the visitor. Ecologically, the area supports sparse but resilient life. Small reptiles, desert plants, and microorganisms adapted to extreme aridity. Survival here depends on efficiency and restraint. The wave represents a critical threshold in this journey. This is no longer a place that simply asks for respect. It enforces it through systems, permits, scarcity, and environmental fragility. Here, access is no longer about arrival. It is about restraint. The wave exists not because people come to see it, but because most are never allowed to. Pamukkale does not rise from stone or forest. It flows. Along the western edge of Anatolia, mineral-rich hot springs emerge from the earth and cascade slowly down a hillside, depositing layer after layer of white travertine. Over thousands of years, this constant movement created terraces that resemble frozen waterfalls, smooth, luminous, and fragile. From a distance, the formation appears artificial, as if sculpted rather than grown. The name Pamukkale means cotton castle, a reference to the soft, cloud-like appearance of the limestone. But this softness is deceptive. The terraces are chemically alive. Warm water, rich in calcium carbonate, continues to shape them, hardening when exposed to air and dissolving when flow is interrupted. The landscape exists only as long as the system remains balanced. Above the terraces lie the ruins of Hierapolis, an ancient Greco-Roman city built directly into this geothermal environment. Temples, baths, and streets were positioned to harness the springs, not to control them. Even the city's location was chosen for water rather than defense. Life here revolved around heat, minerals, and ritual. Access to Pamukkale today is heavily regulated. Visitors are prohibited from wearing footwear on the terraces. Paths are restricted. Water flow is managed carefully to prevent erosion caused by human traffic. These rules are not symbolic, they are functional. Without them, the terraces would degrade rapidly. The site reveals a rare overlap between natural process and human adaptation. Hierapolis did not conquer the springs, it aligned with them. And when the city eventually declined, the travertine continued to grow, indifferent to abandonment. Pamukkale belongs to the sacred and forbidden layer of this journey. Not because it is unreachable, but because it demands discipline. The environment remains active, vulnerable, and precise. One interruption alters everything. Here, preservation is not about isolation. It is about behavior. Pamukkale reminds us that some landscapes survive only when human movement slows to match geological time, when observation replaces occupation. Beyond places like this, nature stops offering systems that can be shared and begins reclaiming every surface we fail to respect. Reynisfjara does not threaten loudly, it waits. On Iceland's southern coast, this black sand beach stretches beneath towering basalt cliffs, their hexagonal columns rising like a fractured wall. The sand is volcanic, fine, dark, and heavy, formed by eruptions that shattered lava into grains and scattered them across the shoreline. There is no softness here, no visual warmth. The color alone signals that this coast was forged, not eroded. The ocean defines everything. Waves arrive from the open North Atlantic with uninterrupted force, carrying energy generated thousands of kilometers away. Most appear ordinary until one does not. Without warning, a sneaker wave surges far beyond the normal tide line, reaching suddenly across the beach with enough power to pull adults into the sea. There is no pattern, no countdown, only aftermath. These waves are not rare anomalies. They are a structural feature of this coastline, produced by deep offshore waters and steep seabed gradients that prevent waves from breaking gradually. Energy remains stored until release. The danger lies not in height, but in timing. The basalt columns behind the beach amplify this severity. Formed by rapidly cooling lava, their sharp geometry offers no refuge. Climbing them is forbidden, not for preservation, but for survival. Rocks fall. Surfaces are slick. The cliffs absorb sound, muting the ocean just enough to dull instinct. Wildlife persists where humans hesitate. Puffins nest along the cliffs during summer months, navigating the wind and spray with precision. The sea supports seals and seabirds, adapted to cold currents and constant motion. Life here is tuned to unpredictability. Human access is unrestricted in theory, yet controlled by consequence. There are signs, warnings, barriers placed far back from the waterline. But Reynisfjara does not rely on enforcement. It relies on physics. This beach belongs to the hostile layer of the journey. Beauty is immediate, dramatic, and deceptive. The environment offers no gradual learning curve. Mistakes are final. Reynisfjara teaches a specific lesson. Nature does not always announce danger. Sometimes it simply removes the margin for error. Here, survival depends not on strength or speed, but on understanding that some landscapes do not forgive curiosity. The Matterhorn is not dangerous because it is unpredictable. It is dangerous because it is precise. Rising sharply to 4,478 meters on the border between Switzerland and Italy, the Matterhorn stands apart from surrounding peaks by geometry alone. Its near-perfect pyramidal shape draws the eye immediately, a symmetry so clean it appears engineered. That illusion of order is what makes the mountain lethal. Each of the Matterhorn's four faces descends along a different ridge, aligned almost exactly with the cardinal directions. Snow, ice, and rock behave differently on each side, responding to sunlight, wind, and temperature in distinct ways. Conditions change not by day, but by angle. The mountain's rock is fractured. Freeze-thaw cycles loosen stone continuously, sending debris down narrow couloirs without warning. What appears solid from a distance often is not. Handholds fail, anchors shift, roots collapse incrementally rather than catastrophically, creating the false sense of manageability. Since its first ascent in 1865, the Matterhorn has claimed the lives of more than 500 climbers. Many were experienced. Many made no technical error. Exposure, altitude, and sudden weather shifts leave little room for correction. The margin for survival is thin, by design, not accident. Despite this, the Matterhorn is among the most photographed mountains on Earth. Its image appears on packaging, postcards, and tourism campaigns reduced to symbol. That familiarity obscures its reality. This is not a forgiving alpine environment. It is a system of constraints. Human presence here is transient and highly regulated. Climbing windows are narrow, rescue is difficult. Infrastructure exists only at lower elevations. Above that, the mountain dictates pace and possibility. The ecosystem mirrors this severity. Vegetation disappears quickly with altitude. Life gives way to ice and bare stone. Nothing thrives where stability cannot be maintained. The Matterhorn belongs to the hostile layer of this journey. It is not remote, it is visible from towns and valleys. But visibility does not equal accessibility. Here, danger comes from clarity rather than chaos. The mountain shows you exactly what it is, and then asks whether you are willing to accept the terms. Most are not. Those who forget that symmetry can be a warning. Learn too late that beauty does not imply mercy. Devil's Pool exists where instinct says it should not. At the very edge of Victoria Falls, one of the largest waterfalls on Earth, a shallow natural basin forms during the dry season, allowing swimmers to approach the precipice of a drop more than 100 meters into the gorge below. From the pool's rim, millions of liters of water rush past every minute, vanishing instantly into mist and thunder. The pool is not engineered. It is a geological coincidence, shaped by erosion and reinforced by a rock lip that slows the water just enough to create a temporary margin. That margin is seasonal. When river levels rise, Devil's Pool disappears entirely, consumed by the flood. Access is only possible during a narrow window of the year. Standing in the pool defies scale. The roar of the falls compresses sound. Spray obscures depth. The horizon collapses into motion. There are no visual cues to measure distance or speed. What appears calm is moving faster than perception allows. Human access here is strictly guided. Entry is controlled by local operators who understand the river's behavior intimately. Even then, risk is absolute. A misstep, a shift in current, a sudden surge, there is no recovery zone. Victoria Falls itself is not the tallest or widest waterfall in the world, but it carries the largest continuous sheet of falling water. That volume generates its own weather. Mist rises hundreds of meters into the air, feeding rainforests along the gorge walls. The environment is alive, loud, and indifferent. Devil's Pool represents the most deceptive form of hostility. The danger is not hidden, it is fully visible, and yet the mind struggles to accept it. The human brain reads the pool as safe because it appears contained. It is not. This place belongs to the hostile layer of the journey, where proximity replaces distance as the threat. Survival depends entirely on restraint and timing. Devil's Pool is not a challenge to overcome. It is a reminder that nature sometimes offers access only to test awareness. Here, courage is irrelevant. Only precision keeps you standing on the edge of the world. The Danakil Depression does not feel hostile. It feels incompatible. Located in northeastern Ethiopia, this vast basin sits more than 100 meters below sea level at the junction of three tectonic plates, slowly pulling the Earth apart. The ground here is not stable. It is thinning, cracking, reforming in real time. Temperatures regularly exceed 50 degrees Celsius. There is little shade, no natural fresh water. Heat radiates upward from the ground, while sunlight presses down with equal intensity. The environment does not offer recovery. It compounds stress continuously. The landscape appears alien. Acidic pools glow yellow, green, and rust red, colored by sulfur and iron deposits. Salt flats stretch to the horizon, crusted and sharp. Active volcanoes rise abruptly from the basin, including Erta Ale, one of the few places on Earth with a persistent lava lake. At night, the ground glows faintly, illuminated from below. Life here is minimal, but not absent. Specialized microorganisms survive in hypersaline pools where conditions resemble early Earth. Their presence suggests that this environment mirrors the planet's past more than its present. Human presence is brief and conditional. Travel requires armed escorts, specialized vehicles, and precise planning. Heat exhaustion and dehydration are constant threats. Communication systems fail easily. Rescue is difficult. There are no nearby settlements capable of support. Despite this, the Danakil Depression has long been traversed by Afar salt miners, who extract salt blocks by hand and transport them across the desert by camel. Their survival depends on generational knowledge rather than technology. Even so, exposure claims lives. This place belongs to the beyond-human layer of the journey. The danger here is not sudden, it is cumulative. The body does not fail in moments, it degrades steadily under unrelenting conditions. The Danakil Depression does not challenge human limits dramatically, it erodes them quietly. Here, endurance replaces bravery. Mistakes are not punished immediately. They are absorbed by heat, time, and exhaustion. The land does not push back. It simply waits for the body to realize it does not belong. Lake Baikal does not overwhelm through scale alone. It overwhelms through depth. Located in southern Siberia, Baikal is the deepest lake on Earth, reaching nearly 1,650 meters below the surface. It holds around 20% of the planet's unfrozen freshwater, more than all the Great Lakes combined. But what defines Baikal is not volume, it is age. At over 25 million years old, Baikal is the oldest freshwater lake on Earth, formed by a continental rift that is still slowly widening. The lake is not settling, it is opening. The ground beneath it continues to pull apart, deepening the basin year by year. The water is astonishingly clear. In winter, visibility can reach 40 meters, revealing a world beneath the ice that feels suspended in time. When temperatures drop, methane gas trapped below the surface freezes into vertical columns of bubbles, creating patterns that look artificial but are entirely natural. The ice itself sings cracking, shifting, echoing as it expands and contracts. Life here evolved in isolation. More than half of Baikal's species exist nowhere else. The most famous is the Baikal seal, the only freshwater seal on Earth, whose presence still defies complete scientific explanation. Microscopic organisms filter the water continuously, maintaining clarity despite the lake's size. Human access changes dramatically with season. In summer, the water is brutally cold, capable of incapacitating a swimmer in minutes. In winter, the frozen surface becomes a temporary landscape solid enough to drive across, yet always unpredictable. Pressure cracks can open suddenly, splitting ice sheets without warning. Settlements along Baikal's shore remain small and dispersed. Infrastructure retreats quickly from the water's edge. The lake resists development not through danger alone, but through permanence. It cannot be reshaped within human timescales. Lake Baikal belongs to the beyond human layer of the journey. It is not extreme because it kills quickly, but because it exists on a scale that ignores human relevance. Here, time is geological, depth is absolute, and presence feels temporary by default. Baikal does not ask how long you will stay. It assumes you will leave. The Aletsch Glacier does not move quickly. It moves inevitably. Stretching more than 20 kilometers through the Bernese Alps, Aletsch is the largest glacier in Europe. From above, it resembles a frozen river wide, layered, and heavy, flowing between mountain walls, with no urgency, yet no pause. What appears static is, in fact, advancing several meters each year under its own weight. This ice is ancient. Some of it fell as snow thousands of years ago, compacted layer by layer into a dense mass that records climate history like a ledger. Air bubbles trapped deep within the glacier preserve atmospheric conditions from eras long before industrial time. The glacier is not just ice, it is memory. The surface is fractured and alive. Crevasses open where stress concentrates, slicing deep blue seams into white. Meltwater streams carve channels that disappear suddenly into vertical shafts, plunging unseen toward the rock below. In summer, the glacier groans low, internal sounds produced by shifting pressure and temperature. Human access is limited and conditional. Trails and viewpoints exist along the glacier's margins, but stepping onto the ice requires guides, equipment, and restraint. The surface changes daily. Snow bridges collapse, routes vanish. Navigation depends on reading subtle signs that technology cannot replace. Ecologically, Aletsch defines its surroundings. Meltwater feeds alpine rivers that support ecosystems far downstream. Vegetation retreats as the ice advances, then slowly recolonizes exposed ground when it withdraws. The glacier dictates timing, not the other way around. Yet what makes Aletsch part of the beyond human world is not danger alone, it is scale in time. The glacier responds to climate shifts with delayed consequence. What melts today reflects decisions made decades earlier. What survives tomorrow depends on restraint practiced now. Despite protection as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, Aletsch is shrinking. Its retreat is measurable, visible, and irreversible within human lifetimes. The ice that once filled entire valleys is thinning, shortening, breaking apart. Standing before Aletsch, perspective collapses. Human motion feels insignificant. Speech feels unnecessary. This is not a place that reacts to presence. It absorbs it. Aletsch Glacier reminds us that some forces are not dramatic because they are violent, but because they are patient. And patience, applied at geological scale, is absolute. Ilulissat Ice Fjord does not exist in the present. It exists in motion across centuries. On Greenland's western coast, this narrow fjord channels ice from the Surmek-Kujalek Glacier, one of the fastest-moving and most productive glaciers on Earth. Each year, tens of billions of tons of ice break away from the glacier's face and enter the fjord, forming massive icebergs that drift slowly toward the open sea. The scale is difficult to process. Icebergs here rise like buildings, some towering more than 100 meters above the water, with far more hidden below the surface. Their shapes are unstable, constantly rotating, cracking, and collapsing as freshwater ice meets saltwater resistance. The soundscape is never silent. Deep booms echo as pressure releases and ice fractures without warning. This glacier has been advancing and carving continuously for thousands of years. Even during periods of global cooling, it did not stop. That persistence makes Ilulissat a geological constant rather than a seasonal feature. It is not frozen in time. It is actively reshaping coastlines. Human presence remains peripheral. The town of Ilulissat sits nearby, but it does not approach the fjord's edge. Infrastructure retreats early, leaving wide buffer zones where ice dictates access. Boats can enter only partway, stopped by dense ice jams that block passage regardless of technology or intent. Wildlife adapts to this instability. Seals rest on drifting ice. Whales navigate between slow-moving blocks with precision. Birds circle above fractures where nutrients surface. Life here does not anchor itself. It moves with the ice. What defines Ilulissat Ice Fjord as beyond human is not hostility, but indifference. The environment does not respond to observation. It does not become safer with familiarity. Change here is structural, not situational. Climate has begun to accelerate this system. The glacier's speed has increased, carving more frequently, releasing ice faster than before. The fjord is recording planetary change in real time, one iceberg at a time. Standing at its edge, scale reverses. The ice feels permanent. The observer feels temporary. Ilulissat is not a destination. It is a process. A reminder that some places are not meant to be understood in moments or seasons, but in millennia, and that humanity now stands close enough to witness forces it cannot slow, redirect, or contain. The Waitomo glowworm caves do not impress through scale or force. They impress through absence. Beneath the green hills of New Zealand's North Island lies a network of limestone caverns formed over more than 30 million years by slow erosion. Water seeped through rock, hollowing chambers and tunnels without urgency. What emerged was not spectacle, but space, quiet, enclosed, and detached from surface time. Inside these caves lives a species found nowhere else on Earth, Arachnocampa luminosa. Despite the name, these glowworms are not worms at all, but the larval stage of a fungus gnat. They emit a soft blue-green light through bioluminescence, using it to attract prey in the darkness. Hundreds, sometimes thousands, hang from cave ceilings, turning the void above into a living constellation. The light is not decorative. It is functional. Threads of sticky silk descend invisibly from each lava, forming a vertical trap. Insects drawn toward the glow are caught mid-air. Survival here depends on precision and restraint. Energy is conserved, movement is minimal. Sound behaves differently underground. Voices echo briefly, then vanish. Water drips slowly, marking time without rhythm. There is no wind, no horizon. Vision adjusts not to brightness, but to subtle variation. The cave trains perception inward. Human access is deliberately limited. Boats glide silently through flooded chambers. Lights are dimmed. Touch is restricted. Even small disruptions, noise, vibration, heat, can alter the glowworm's behavior. Too much interference extinguishes the light entirely. Ecologically, the caves form a closed system. Nutrients arrive from the surface only through water and falling insects. Everything here depends on balance. Excess does not survive. Waitomo belongs to the hidden world layer of this journey. It is not dangerous in a conventional sense. It does not threaten the body. It challenges orientation, patience, and expectation. This is not a place to conquer or traverse quickly. It is a place that reveals how little is required for wonder, darkness, stillness, and time. In Waitomo, nature does not display itself outwardly. It withdraws, and in that withdrawal, it becomes impossible to ignore. Benagil Cave is not defined by its entrance. It is defined by light. Carved into the limestone cliffs along Portugal's Algarve coast, the cave exists as a hollow chamber open to the sea, accessible only by water or air. There are no land routes leading inside. Waves, tides, and timing determine entry. The cave decides when it can be reached. Its most striking feature is the opening in its ceiling, a near-perfect circular skylight formed by erosion. Sunlight pours through this aperture, moving slowly across the cave floor as the day progresses. At certain hours, the beam illuminates the sand below with unnatural clarity, while the surrounding walls remain in shadow. The effect is spatial disorientation. The cave feels larger than it is. The limestone here is porous and fragile, shaped by centuries of wave impact and chemical dissolution. The process continues. Rockfalls occur without warning. The cave is not stable, it is temporary. Its beauty exists on borrowed time. Sound inside Benagil Cave is muted and directional. Waves enter through the archway, rebound softly, and retreat. There is no echo. The cave absorbs noise, creating a sense of isolation despite proximity to open water. Human access is limited by condition rather than rule. Swimming in requires calm seas and strong judgment. Boats must time entry precisely. Standing inside is not guaranteed. High tide erases the beach completely, replacing sand with water and narrowing the margin for presence. Ecologically, the cave is a transition zone. Marine life occupies the submerged edges. Birds rest briefly on ledges near the skylight. Everything here passes through. Nothing stays long. Benagil Cave belongs to the hidden world layer, not because it is concealed by distance, but because it is concealed by timing. You cannot arrive whenever you choose. The environment dictates the moment. This is not a place of permanence. It demonstrates a quieter form of power, one that reveals itself briefly, then closes, one that depends on rhythm rather than resistance. Benagil Cave reminds us that some wonders are not protected by danger or isolation, but by the simple fact that they are only visible when nature allows the opening to remain. Iguazu Falls is not a single event. It is a system in motion. Straddling the border between Brazil and Argentina, Iguazu is composed of 275 individual waterfalls spread across nearly 3 kilometers of river. Rather than one vertical drop, the landscape fractures repeatedly, forcing water to split, collide, and reunite in constant turbulence. The result is not a view, but an experience of scale that refuses to resolve into a single frame. The Iguazu River approaches the edge calmly, wide and deceptively smooth. Then, the ground disappears. Water plunges into a massive chasm known as the Devil's Throat, where nearly half the river's volume drops in a continuous arc. Mist rises hundreds of meters into the air, generating localized clouds, rainbows, and wind patterns that exist only because the falls are there. Sound dominates everything. The roar is not momentary, it is sustained, overwhelming, and physical. Vibrations travel through walkways and into the body. Speech becomes impossible. Even thought feels compressed by volume. The falls were formed by volcanic activity, followed by tectonic fractures that created weaknesses in the basalt plateau. Over time, erosion widened those fractures, allowing the river to dismantle the land piece by piece. Iguazu is not finished. It is still migrating upstream, reshaping the border as it moves. Human access is extensive but constrained. Elevated walkways trace the perimeter, allowing proximity without interference. The structures are designed to yield, sprayed constantly, reinforced against corrosion, built to accept saturation. There is no illusion of control. The water dictates conditions at all times. The surrounding rainforest amplifies the intensity. The mist feeds dense vegetation, creating one of the most biodiverse regions in South America. Birds, insects, and mammals occupy every layer of the environment, thriving on the constant moisture and noise. Iguazu belongs to the water as force layer of this journey. It is not hostile through sudden danger, but through accumulation. There is no safe distance where its presence fades. The falls dominate space continuously. Here, water is not background. It is architecture. Iguazu Falls reminds us that some natural wonders do not invite contemplation. They impose it. And in doing so, they make one thing unmistakably clear. The river does not end here. It asserts itself. Niagara Falls does not rely on height to command attention. It relies on volume. Where Lake Erie drains into Lake Ontario, an immense body of fresh water is forced through a narrow channel and over a limestone escarpment. Every second, more than 2.8 million liters of water plunge over the edge, an unbroken, continuous transfer of mass and energy. The falls never pause. They never thin. They simply persist. Niagara is composed of 3 distinct cascades: Horseshoe Falls, American Falls, and Bridal Veil Falls. Together, they form the largest sheet of falling water on Earth. From a distance, the scene appears controlled, framed by cities, bridges, and observation decks. Up close, that order collapses. The water's force overwhelms orientation. Mist rises so thick it obscures depth. The air vibrates. Geologically, Niagara is temporary. The falls have been retreating upstream since the last ice age, eroding the rock beneath them centimeter by centimeter. What stands today is a moving front. The edge you see now did not exist centuries ago, and it will not remain where it is. Human intervention attempts to manage the system, but only partially. Large portions of the river are diverted through tunnels to generate hydroelectric power, supplying electricity to millions of homes in both countries. Even so, the falls retain more than enough force to remain dominant. Energy extraction here is not control, it is negotiation. The danger lies in proximity rather than extremity. Since the mid-19th century, thousands of bodies have been recovered from the base of the falls. Some were accidents, others were intentional. The water does not distinguish. Once past the threshold, outcome is predetermined. Despite this, Niagara remains accessible. Walkways lead close enough to feel spray on skin. Boats approach the base, disappearing briefly into mist. The experience is immersive, but never intimate. The water keeps its distance even as it surrounds. Niagara belongs to the water as force layer of the journey. It is not remote. It is not silent. It exists within civilization and yet remains uncontested. Here, nature does not need isolation to remain powerful. It operates openly, continuously, and without apology. Niagara Falls stands as a reminder that even in the most developed landscapes, certain forces remain beyond redesign. They can be harnessed, they can be framed, but they cannot be diminished. This journey does not end with distance traveled or places checked off a map. It ends with a realization. The most untouched places on Earth are not defined by beauty alone, nor by danger, nor by how difficult they are to reach. They are defined by limits, by the point at which the world stops adapting to human presence and begins asserting its own conditions. Across these landscapes, a pattern emerges. Where nature cooperates, balance is fragile. Where it withdraws, silence replaces spectacle. Where it becomes hostile, mistakes lose their margin. And beyond that, there are environments that do not resist us at all, because resistance is unnecessary. The body simply does not belong. These places are not warnings, they are measurements. They measure how far infrastructure can extend before it dissolves, how much technology can compensate before physics reasserts itself, how long attention can be held before scale, time, or exposure erodes relevance. What remains constant is not threat, but indifference. The planet does not react to being observed. It does not adjust to expectation. It continues through ice, water, heat, pressure, and erosion, whether anyone is present or not. To encounter these places is not to conquer them, it is to recognize boundaries. Because the world's most unbelievable wonders are not extraordinary due to rarity, they are extraordinary because they remain unaltered, precisely by reminding us where human control ends and where humility must begin.